Look, 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 look. What a great dish. Some stuffed eggs, beautiful, delicious, and very easy to make. So, let's get to work.
Hello?
Today, we're going to share a recipe. We're going to make some super easy stuffed eggs. You won't believe how delicious they are. So let's start precisely with some eggs. For this, the first thing we'll do is boil 8 large eggs, size L. I put them in a saucepan, cover them with water, add a splash of vinegar and a little salt. That way, if any of them crack, the membrane won't break and the egg won't spill out. Once it starts boiling, we let it boil for 10 minutes. Then we remove it from the heat and put the eggs straight into very cold water. That way, the cooking process stops and they turn out perfect. Plus, they'll be easier to peel. And as always, you just gently crack the shell a bit and carefully remove it until they're completely clean. We're going to peel all the eggs and then cut them in half, checking where the yolk is so it's more or less centered. Alright, take a sharp knife and cut each egg in half just like I did here. Once you have your plate full of egg halves, what you'll do is remove the yolks. There you go, take them all out. We're going to set aside half of them and the other half we're going to mash. Which you can do directly, simply with a fork. A dessert fork will work perfectly for you. Mash it until it has a more or less uniform texture. Then, take 2 cans of tuna or bonito and drain the liquid. So you press a little with a spoon and then release it outside. Once you have both cans without liquid, put them in a large bowl, one like this. Just use a fork to stir it around until both cans fall inside. With the same fork, give it a few turns so it stays loose and mixes better. If you want it to come out really well mixed, this step is important so there aren't any big pieces left. Here, add the egg we grated earlier and 4 tablespoons of fried tomato sauce. Although, as always, I leave this up to each person's taste. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons. If you like, you can add some extra spices at this point. The amount of tomato is really up to your personal taste, whether you want it a bit more liquid or a bit drier. So I'll leave it up to your taste. Just make sure it stays a little creamy, that gives it a really, really nice touch. What you have to do now is mix it really, really well, stirring it around with the same fork so you don't have to dirty another one. And what you'll have is a pretty uniform paste like this one you see here, perfect for filling these eggs we had on the plate. I'm gonna start with the first one. We're going to take a small dessert spoon like this, and we're going to fill it, pressing a little so that the hole where the yolk was is completely covered, and there are no gaps inside. We give it a bit of volume, and I think this one is ready. I'll have to repeat this operation 16 times, because since there were 8 eggs, we have 16 egg halves. A perfect dish for a fun family appetizer, but give it an extra touch. Of course, I'm gonna do it directly with mayonnaise, so I put a little bit on top of each one, like this, so it looks a bit fun. And besides softening the flavors and tasting great, it looks nice. Also, I'm going to grate one of the yolks I have left over to give it a little extra color. And since color always makes you want to eat, a small leaf of basil or fresh parsley on top, and everything is ready to take to the table and enjoy to the fullest. Look, 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 look. What an amazing look. And it's just that grabbing one and wanting to take a bite is practically the same thing. So I can't resist. Despite trying to showcase it up close on camera, I take a bite. But look inside. What an absolute marvel. Enjoy. A whole lot. And the ingredients couldn't be any simpler. You can see them there, written out and detailed. So you can make it whenever you want. Remember, they can be made in no time and they turn out great. Also, you could add a personal touch to make them more to your liking, for example, with some cooked shrimp on top, for example. I hope you'll give me ideas down here in the comments, and together we'll come up with a million great ideas. Also, let me remind you that I have hundreds of ideas on the channel. So check out previous videos and find your next favorite recipe. But if what you're looking for are sweet recipes, here is Saladolandia, my sweet recipes channel, where I have hundreds of ideas that I'm sure you'll love too. And I'm going to enjoy this because it's so good.